Would you believe that some cellos have sold for over $20 million? That's right, not 20,000, $20 million. Well, the question becomes, how much money do you actually need to buy a good instrument? What's the difference between a $500 instrument, a $50,000 instrument, or a $500,000 instrument? And what is it that you really should be looking for when you get an instrument? And this is really important. Do you actually need to get an antique as an instrument? Stick with me into the end because I'm going to tell you what you should be looking for in an instrument, how to get one that's right for you, and how to avoid one of the worst traps any string instrument buyer could fall into. So today I'm going to break this down into 4 levels of instrument. And at the lowest level is a machine-made instrument. Now you can get something for as low as $100 and maybe going up to $2,000. But should you even bother to buy one of these? Yes, it's an easy way to get into playing, but often the instruments are very difficult to play, even hard physically on the hand, don't sound very well, and can end up being very discouraging. So is there something better that would still be considered entry level? Now, what if I told you there's a type of instrument that's partially handmade and that won't break the bank when you buy it? So there's a type of instrument that is machine made, factory made, and hand finished. Now, these instruments usually range between 2,000 to 10,000 US dollars. And so there's still a reasonable way to get started. The good thing about these instruments is that you keep the cost down because the initial part of it is machine made. But these instruments are finished off by hand and refined in the areas that might be a little bit rough. The end result is that you could get an instrument that sounds quite good and is quite playable as well without having to go beyond 5 digits. Now, I would categorize machine made, hand finished instruments as being good for both intermediate and advanced students, but even for beginners if you have the money, because you'll start off right and you won't have something that's frustrating you right from the beginning. But still, those instruments aren't quite professional. Can you get that professional sound without going crazy and spending millions of dollars? In my opinion, you can. Where you're going to go there is to a luthier. A luthier is a master craftsman who will make violins, violas, and cellos, sometimes to your exact specifications. But the point is, it's a modern living maker of these fine instruments, and they've been trained with these traditional skills in the same way that Stradivarius or Guarnerius were trained. But because they're still living, they're not charging ridiculous prices for their instruments. You can get a good instrument between $10,000 and $80,000 at the very top for the most famous modern makers. All right, but let's say you have a spare $50,000 to $2 million just burning a hole in your pocket, and you want to buy one of those classic instruments with famous names like Amati, Stradivari, Guarnerius. Well, the good news is they do exist, but they're extremely expensive. When you're talking about the old Cremonese makers, you're talking about instruments that are at least $500,000. And that's because you've got 4 factors that determine this. You've got the famous name, you've got how old they are, you've got the provenance, and that means who played the instrument before, the history of the instrument, who owned it. And you also have the playability. Most of these instruments will be very, very fragile, but should be in good condition because they're such well-known instruments. But the $20 million question is, should you spend $20 million on an instrument like this? Many people assume if they can get an older famous instrument that they're going to have a better quality instrument. But I say that that's not necessarily so. In fact, many informal and formal tests have shown that people can't tell the difference between a fine old instrument and a modern instrument by a great maker. So do you really want to spend all that money? And I can give you an example. I had a friend who wanted to buy an old English cello, I would say about 150 years old, and it was a beautiful instrument. The varnish was gorgeous. You could feel the history coming off of it. And when I played it, it just sounded so warm and beautiful. But the problem was it didn't project at all. And we string players are often playing with other instruments, pianos, orchestras, And with an instrument like this, once you play with these other instruments, all that special quality that you could hear just when you were playing alone in a room, it's just all gone. It's like that quiet friend of yours. As long as you're just talking with that friend, you find them very interesting. But as soon as you get them in a group, they just sort of fade into the background. And I felt bad because my friend spent six figures on that instrument. Now, that story has a happy ending because one good thing about those antique instruments is that they do increase in value. So, this person later sold the instrument and made a nice profit on it and got a modern instrument that sounds great. But then there's another question: can you actually invest in instruments? And the answer is yes. But unless you're a millionaire or really a multimillionaire, I wouldn't suggest investing in instruments as an activity to make money. But the good news is this: if you buy a modern handmade instrument by a master craftsman, which is obviously much more affordable than the antiques, you can know that even those instruments do appreciate as well, so that if in the future you want an even better one, the instrument you have now will have increased in value and help you on your way to get that better one. They're not like cars, they don't depreciate. As long as you take care of them, you can expect that they'll hold and increase their value. Many of these modern makers are producing instruments of the same quality, I would argue, of the great makers of the past. So, why would you spend so much money on an antique that might be very fragile, difficult to maintain, and which would break the bank when you could get a great instrument for a reasonable, relatively, amount of money? So, what's my recommendation then? I would say get a factory made, hand finished instrument. You'll definitely be able to get something that's nice for under $10,000, often a lot less than that. It should at least hold its value, but it'll be very playable. It will sound very good. And most importantly, it's not going to hold you back as you progress. If you're a serious student or a budding professional, I would recommend getting a handmade instrument by one of the great modern makers. Now, I know it is as expensive as a good car, but the thing is, it will way outlast the car. The old instruments from the 16 and 1700s are any indication. Your instrument's going to go on for a long, long time. You may only need that one instrument your whole life, and while you're playing it, it's increasing in value, and it will serve you well as a beautiful instrument that you can use to express yourself. I'll never forget what one of my teachers, the great David Finkel, said to me one day. He said, if you're a good player with a good musical sense, all you need is a basically good instrument, and you'll have what you need to play compellingly, beautifully, and to move the audience with your artistry. So the bottom line is, you don't need a Stradivarius to sound like you're playing on one. I hope this has helped you today. Please like and subscribe if you thought it brought you value, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye bye.